Welcome to the podcast. Today is Friday. I normally do the podcast on Thursdays, but it's been just crazy. It's been hectic. But not to miss a good topic, I want to talk today about getting the right dog for you. And something that I've talked about sort of a lot of times, and I'll probably address it sort of more a lot of times because it's a really important thing. Getting a dog is a lifetime commitment for the lifetime of that dog, 10 years, 15 years, 8 years, 9 years, depends on the dog you're getting, but it's something you're kind of jumping into with both feet. So in other words, you don't really have this chance. It's kind of like having a child. You're jumping into this with a child for 18 years plus. With a dog, you're jumping in for a little less time, but also differently. Like the responsibility of having a dog is, in a way, much different because you can't leave the dog alone after a few years. I mean, maybe 10 years or so. You can leave the kids with somebody you know, or even earlier than that. You can babysit. I guess that doesn't make much sense. You can board your dog, but there are things that you've really got to consider with a dog. One is the responsibility, the work, and also the responsibility to others. So in other words, when we have a dog, we have a responsibility to ourselves, we have a responsibility to our dog, but we also have a responsibility to other people. And that's kind of the crux of this issue. So people get dogs, and a lot of times they're guilted into it by rescues, by breeders, by shelters or whatever, and they get the wrong dog. And that's the main focus of this podcast is what is the right dog for you? Who are you? And what do you have that can benefit the dog that you're getting? And how can the dog you're getting benefit you? That's really an important thing to think about. Because I think, I've been in rescue and training for a lot of years. So I know what I'm talking about on this. And it's something that I don't really like to lecture people on. But inevitably, when I don't lecture them on it, they make huge mistakes. I see it constantly. I see it over and over and over again. People get a dog, the dog is too much. They have a hard time with the dog. They try to enlist the help of a trainer. They try to figure out what to do. They send the dog for training. They ask a million people's advice. And nothing really tends to work if the dog is wrong for you. It's kind of like getting into an abusive relationship. You can't fix the core of the dog. And that's something nobody's going to tell you. Everybody's going to say, oh, well, you send it to training, and then board and train trainers are going to get you for 3 months, 4 months, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. And if the dog has the ability to be trained or to be counter conditioned, let's say, the board and train's a great idea. I've got nothing against board and train. Inevitably, I will say though that the dog will need to be trained by you. So a board and train trainer can tweak some of the things, reset some of the things in the dog's head. But inevitably, the dog must know that the dog should do it for you. So when you have a dog that has, let's say, for example, a leash aggression issues towards other dogs, and you send that dog to somebody, the trainer will tell the dog what is right and what is wrong and then explain it to them in no uncertain terms, I would hope, if you're paying that much money for it. But there's a level of respect that the dog has to have for you that you can reinforce those behaviors. In other words, the trainer is going to set the bar, expect something, and then demand that same behavior over and over and over again. And it's something I do with the dogs I train. Every good trainer does it. It's not a specialty or anything like that. I do think, a lot of clicker trainers, positive only trainers. And when I say clicker trainers, I'm going to kind of back up for a second. I don't mean clicker trainers like people who use a click to reinforce or to mark a behavior. And it would be to mark it, not to reinforce it. But the people who will only use positive training. I've seen a lot of great clicker trainers. Jana trains with clickers. I've seen other people use clickers even with e-collars. It's fantastic. I've got no problem with it. But when you rely solely on positive and you're not going to give the dog aversive training or aversive signals or messages, you're going to have a problem. So here's what happens. First of all, you're going to get a dog. You need to know who you are as a person. How big are you? How strong are you? How confident are you? How calm are you? How well are you able to communicate with a dog if the dog is going to get stressed out? for the most part, I've seen that people who get dogs that have, reactivity issues, they're barking, even dogs that aren't necessarily aggressive, dogs that are more reactive on a leash. They want to go play with that other dog, and they're screaming and crying and barking and carrying on. A lot of people can't be calm enough to get the dog through that. So they start to get excited, and then they yell at the dog and they do whatever, and it just excites the dog further. So think about who you are as a person and how well suited you are to a dog that might be overly dominant, might be overly playful, might be really strong on the leash, and think about if you can handle that. Because what happens a lot of times, you'll go to, let's say, for example, you're going to a rescue organization. They will guilt you into taking the dog. They'll say, oh, the dog had a history. The dog was going to be put down. We got the dog out of the shelter. You're the dog's only hope. And they'll put you into this. And they'll also oftentimes give you a dog that you don't want, or that you don't want, but you don't know yet that you don't want it because they're not telling you the truth. Listen, there's a lot of great rescues out there, but there's a lot of shysters out there as well. So you must do your research, and don't get emotionally hooked when you first see that animal. I know it sounds mean. I've said it before. I remember one time I was working at one of the shelters, and somebody came in and they wanted to see a dog, and they saw the dog, and I showed them the dog. Another person working there showed them the dog, and after about 5 minutes, the woman said, "I just don't feel it. I'm just not bonding with this dog." And my knee-jerk reaction was, "How dare you?" Right? How dare you do that? But in retrospect, this woman said the right thing, right? She was able to decipher that that was not the dog for her, and kudos to her. She decided it in 10 minutes, and she knew it wasn't the right situation. And I think that's a powerful thing that we should readdress. We should actually address it every time somebody wants to get a dog. You should know the good sides and the bad sides of that dog from all the information that the rescue or the shelter knows. And shame on rescues for adopting dogs to people and saying, oh, it's a lab mix, oh, it's a this mix, it's a that mix, when they know it's not, right? That's a real common thing that happens. So in other words, people don't want to say it's a pit mix, it's a mastiff mix, it's a Corso mix, it's a this mix or a that mix. So they go into the lab, oh, it's got some lab in it, but it doesn't, right? They're selling you a bill of goods, and they're giving you a dog that, that they don't really feel is, I should say, they don't really feel that you would take the dog if they were being honest with you. So that's a big quagmire now, and it happens a lot because people, there's a lot of pits and shelters. And, I was just talking to somebody online, actually a really good friend of mine, who caught some guff from a rescue group because she said the dog should be put down. Now, I've said this countless times. I've talked about putting dogs down that are not right for adoption. Right? If the dog is not right for adoption and the dog is not going to end up in the right home, then I think that dog should be put down because many things. One is the dog will languish. There's organizations here in LA that adopt dogs out, but they keep them in crates for years and years and years and years. And maybe the dog will end up adopted or maybe it won't, but it's languishing for 2, 3, 4, 5 years in a travel crate. A crate that you would put the dog in to ship the dog somewhere. And I think that's so abusive. I think it's so, so horrible. But the dogs that I'm talking about here in this podcast is dogs that just are not suited for the right person. In other words, if you're let's say you're a family with a young child and you end up with a dog that has some severe reaction issues. It doesn't like dogs or people or cats or whatever. You're putting your child in a stressful situation to bring this dog home, right? Now, people always say, well, Robert, you can handle the dog. You should take the dog. And they're right, half right. I can handle the dog, but I don't want to take the dog home. I have my own dogs. I make really intelligent decisions when I'm about to get a dog, and I see that through in the dog. The dog is going to be with me for the rest of its life. When I took Maya, she was a little bit more dog than I really wanted. I trained her. I worked with her. She had some issues around other dogs. I worked through them, right? But I knew I would work through them when I got her. I didn't think that I would suddenly give up on her. So that was a decision I made. I rescued a dog named Boots years and years and years ago who tried to kill my Shar-Pei. He was a Shar-Pei. We worked through it. I saw it through until the day he died. That's what it is. Maya, Goofy, they'll all be with me. Jimmy, Dwayne, Boz, they'll all be with me until the day they die. And I can handle a dog that has behavioral issues, but I don't even really want to bring one into my home. So I remember years ago, there was an organization that a friend of mine started, and she wanted to rescue dogs out of shelters, train them. And this was for any power breed. This was a Rottweiler, Mastiff, a Pit, Corso, or any kind of a dominant type breed. And the idea was that any dog that went out of the shelter that was of this dominant lines, and dominant dogs can also include German Shepherds and Malinois and such, right? That they would require that dog would be trained for 2 to 4 weeks by a qualified trainer, right? By a balanced trainer, and then the dog would get out. Well, this organization had the hardest time raising money for this because it wasn't a feel-good thing, right? People think they can wing it. They can get a car and then they can do it. It's the same people who think they can get a chainsaw and cut down a tree and usually crash the tree into somebody's house or cut off a finger. So it's not that simple. Dominant dogs, especially once they're past their imprint stages of early weeks and months, become ingrained with the behavior that they learn through either omission or bad training. So dogs like that will have a lot of behaviors that aren't easily changeable, and you're going to end up with that dog. So I've said this before, that if for every time somebody takes a difficult dog out of a shelter situation, there are a couple really nice dogs that are left behind. The difficult dogs oftentimes get people's sympathy. They get people to start thinking, oh, I should do the right thing. Oh, the dog deserves a chance. Oh, the dog bit a kid, but maybe the kid was in his face. If a dog deserves a second chance, look first for the dog that deserves his first chance. That's really critical to understand. That if a dog has done nothing wrong, that dog deserves a chance before the dog that has done something wrong. If you're going to really mince words on this, you've got to understand that don't give a dog a chance who's already proven they've done something wrong, or they have the propensity, the likelihood to do something wrong. Take a dog that has shown that it's a good dog. And those dogs exist in the shelter. Believe me, for all the radical animal rights people who are trying to save these difficult dogs, there are really nice dogs in the shelter that could use a home, that could use their first shot, that are really nice dogs. And then we can go back. I always said, after we get all the nice dogs out of the shelters, then we can go back and take all the difficult dogs out of the shelters and give them a chance. But in the meantime, we should focus on that. So you're going to be guilted into a dog that somebody's going to say, well, he doesn't really like dogs, or, he should be an only dog, or he prefers not to have other dog friends. Those are all trigger words that mean the dog is dog reactive or dog aggressive. And reactive can be, assertive. It can be kind of a bad behavior around other dogs without really trying to kill the dog. But a lot of times that behavior in and of itself will trigger aggressive behavior from another dog. For example, you have a dog that is super barky at other dogs. It's barking and lunging and this and that. And people always say, well, if I let him off the leash, he's really fine and he'll be nice to that dog. But the problem is, you can't always let him off the leash, right? And so if the dog is doing this behavior, then that's going to trigger the other dog. The other dog knows that it's on a leash, and the dog is going to know that the behavior is not acceptable. And then the dogs get in trouble. So it triggers the other dog. It gets your anxiety up. At some point, you're going to say, well, are you 100% sure he's going to be fine with this dog? And dogs, for the most part, don't like other dogs getting in their faces. It's just as simple as that. And when a dog is a jerk like that, right, it just means the dog wasn't properly socialized or trained at an early age, or it's got a screw loose and there's something really wrong with it. But the most important thing to look at is that the right dog for you? Are you capable of dealing with this dog for 10 plus years with that behavior? Because a lot of times those kind of behaviors don't just go away. They don't just disappear. They can be managed. We can kind of work on behaviors and substitute behaviors and move the dog into different behaviors and thoughts that can change it. But it's still there, right? If the dog is 2 or 3 years old and the dog is reactive to other dogs, you ain't going to change it. It's just not going to change. Now, you can take this dog. A friend of mine used to do this at the shelter. He would take a team of dogs, and then he would train these dogs every day for 2 to 4 weeks. At the end of that 4-week or 2 to 4 week period, depending on what the dog needed, these dogs were all well trained. They were on a prong collar, they were conditioned, and then they would be adopted out. But they would have to go to somebody who could maintain that level of training, not in its initiation, but in its management phase. So once the dog has this kind of reactivity to people, dogs, or whatever, the dog needs to be occasionally reminded that that is not acceptable and what is acceptable. Same thing with a protection dog. You buy a protection dog, you need to stay on top of the dog's obedience. You need to make sure that the dog will always be able to check back so that you'll see the good behaviors of the dog, right? It's not as easy as just, it's a turnkey. In other words, it's not just replacing a tire. It's actually mending the tire. It's actually working through the behaviors. It's actually understanding that there is something inherently wrong with that dog that you need to work on. So when dogs show, and the main thing here is going to be aggression, right? Aggression, whether through dominance or fear, is going to be a behavior that's prevalent in dogs that aren't well trained or socialized. Some of them are shelter dogs, some of them are rescue dogs. And I'm going to say it openly that the dogs that are in shelters, there are a lot of really nice dogs in shelters, a lot. But there are some jerks. If you get a jerk, you're setting yourself up for a lot of work. I'm going to tell you that right now. You're going to end up with a dog that needs to be managed and babysat, and you need to be careful where you go, and you need to be careful who you introduce the dog to, and all that. And if when a rescue tries to talk you into that dog and says, oh, he just needs some socialization, or he just needs a few classes, then I would tell the person, the rescue person, to do that, to get the dog through the training. That's the responsibility of a rescue, is get the dog trained, and then you'll take the dog. Don't take a dog that has behavioral issues. I'm telling you, you're setting yourself up for no happy times whatsoever. Don't do it. The other thing you got to be careful of is when rescues and breeders, by the way, will try to sell you on taking siblings or litter mates, or which are siblings, by the way, or 2 dogs of the same age. Oh, the other dog is lonely, you should take both. Don't do it. There's no worse situation for training, socializing, or anything than 2 dogs together. It's the worst thing you can do. And I'm saying 2 dogs at the same age. It's really great if you have an older dog and that dog is socialized, well-trained, well-behaved, and you bring a younger dog in, that's fantastic. But don't bring in 2 dogs at the same time. That's a disaster waiting to happen. And look at the size of the dog that you're going to get. If you're a small person, man or woman, doesn't matter, and you're looking at a dog that's more than, let's say, 75% of your body weight. So if you're 100 pounds and you're getting a 75-pound dog, you might be setting yourself up for a tougher job, right? I'm 190 pounds. My dogs are about 60 to 70 pounds each. I can handle them really well. I'm a pretty strong guy. Not the strongest guy in the world, but I'm a strong guy. And I can handle a physically strong dog. But as a 190-pound guy, I am not going to get a 150-pound dog. It's more than I want to handle. I don't know why people get dogs that big. I have no clue. Makes no sense to me. I don't think they should be pets. They're a very big dog. Great Danes, the big Mastiff, even the Tibetan Mastiffs. They're super big, strong dogs that when they go wrong, they go really, really wrong. And it's really hard to deal with. So look at the dogs. And I'm talking now, once I'm away from a rescue dog, at that point, then I'm talking about a breeder dog, a whatever it is. It can be a puppy, it can be an adult dog. There's nothing wrong with taking an adult dog, right? So a lot of breeders will sell off older dogs that have either been returned, they held the dog back to show the dog, they held the dog back because they thought they would breed the dog, and they decided not to. And now they have a dog that's 9 months, a year, 2 years old, and it would make a dynamite dog for somebody. I remember an old client and friend of mine had a really nice shepherd, and this shepherd had some behavioral issues, seriously did. And Alan, my client, did a great job training this dog. He was fantastic. He was on it, and he loved this dog to the nth degree. Now, he was a very focused person, I'll say that. He spent an immense amount of time training with me and then following up the training. And the dog was perfect. The dog was great with him, his wife, his kids, the housekeeper, every single person. But he did a lot of work to make that happen. It didn't just happen on its own. Now, When that dog passed away, sadly, he said, I want to get another dog. I'm looking at a rescue. Now, at this point, he's got, I think, 3 or 4 kids, and they're small kids. And he's looking around. And I suggested to him not to get a rescue. Now, here's a guy, me, who advocates for rescues, advocates for dogs. Why would I tell him not to get a rescue? And I'm going to tell you why. Because when he first got Molly, the original rescue, he didn't have any children. It was him and his wife. And they brought a child in. So the dog saw the child come in. Then the dog saw another child come in, and another child. And I think it's 3. I'm not sure. It might be 4. But this dog, Molly, saw all these children come in. He structured the dog, and he had a really great way to keep the dog in check. Never an issue, right? It's one of my number one concerns is dogs that hurt kids. He never had an issue. But I said, look, you've got 4 kids in your house. You're going to bring in a rescue dog who may or may not be able to handle the stress of his house is, very stressful because he's got a lot of kids running around, people, a lot of activity. But he's a very together guy. In other words, the house isn't like a free-for-all, but there's a lot of chaotic energy when you have kids, whether you have 1 or 19, doesn't matter. You got a lot. But I advocated really strongly. I said, listen, why don't you find a lab breeder who has a dog that they maybe held back that we know is good with kids, that we know is a really mellow dog, and don't roll those dice, right? Rolling the dice when you're getting a dog and you've got kids is it's a tough one because it's tough for the dog and it's tough for the people. It's better that you get a dog from a source that you know is good, a breeder or whatever, or a rescue who has already had this dog or knows the history of this dog, right? There's nothing wrong with rescuing a dog if you know about the dog's history, but you should know about it if you have a special circumstance. One, you can't handle the dog, you can't handle the chaotic energy, you don't know how to give corrections, you're not really a skilled dog handler or a trainer, or you have children, right? Those are really important pieces. Otherwise, if you're a single guy and you've got a lot of free time, you work from home, and you want to get a dog that needs more work, fine. Get that dog and do the work, go to the training classes, do what you're going to do, and make sure that that's the right dog for you. Remember, too, that a lot of times people get dogs, sport dogs. For example, a German Shepherd, a Belgian Malinois, a Dutchie, a Rottweiler, a Doberman, any of these dogs, or even a high drive Border Collie, Australian Shepherd, thinking how much fun it's going to be to have this dog. But all the while not realizing that that's a full-time job almost, right? When you have a dog that's really high in drive, that drive needs to be channeled all the time. It's not just you're going to go to the protection training club, or you're going to go to the dock diving club or the obedience club, and the dog's going to turn on and then it's going to flick a switch and go off. That doesn't happen. Is that the right dog for you? Is that a commitment you can make from now on for the next 10 years? Because it's not fair to get a dog like that and then let the dog suddenly languish, right? It's like buying a racehorse and walking it around the block. It's not fair to the animal. And you got to think about that. You got to put your selfish, narcissistic, entitled ways out of your mind and be fair to the other animal. You got to be fair to yourself because you're putting yourself in a bad position, but you're going to survive, right? You're going to be fine because you'll dump the dog off on somebody or back to the breeder or back to the shelter or back to the rescue, and you're going to go on. But this dog, the more different homes the dog goes into, the harder that dog will have bonding. I'll give you an example. Goofy had one home, mine. He came from the breeder to my home. It was fantastic. Maya went through 4 or 5 different homes before I got her, and she's very needy. She loves me. She's very, very loving and everything like that. But she's a damaged dog in a lot of ways, right? She's not really into training. She's not into that because she's confused. And that happens when dogs have multiple homes that they're shifted through. And when dogs are treated like a commodity. I hate it. I really, really dislike it. I got no problem with breeders selling dogs. None. But I have a problem with dogs being shuffled around, whether it's through rescue or sales. I don't like it. I really, really hate it. So again, being honest with yourself on what you can and can't do, and look at your day. What did you do today when you woke up? What was the next thing you did? What did you do around lunchtime? What did you do around dinner time? What did you do before bed? Can you work a dog in that's going to require several training sessions throughout the day? And then, as they get older, they're going to want to settle down. Goofy and Maya settle down really nicely now. Goofy's under my desk. Maya's sitting behind me. Totally chill. That wasn't the case when they were 2, 3, 4 years old. Wasn't the case till they were 5 or 6 or 7 years old. That's when they started chilling out. And that's what you've got to really think about. And the more work it is, like people, again, go back to the littermate syndrome, people get these dogs and they say, well, they'll keep each other company. But they don't, right? They'll keep each other company in the sense that they don't pay attention to you, that they'll never really bond to you, because they're bonding to the dog. A dog will bond stronger to another dog if it's raised with a dog of similar age than it will with you. And then when you go to train it, you have to use harder corrections. You have to use harder techniques to get the dog to listen to you. It's not going to be just happening with treats and cheese. It's going to happen with more compulsion, and that's something you want to try to avoid. I mean, I've got no problem putting compulsion on a dog, but I do have a problem when that compulsion is unfair and unnecessary. And getting siblings, getting littermates is a problem. It's definitely a problem. So think about what you're ready for in a dog. Think about the breed, the size, the temperament. Think about what you have to do with this dog. If you're seeing behaviors early on, you're going to have to be honest with yourself, right? People don't do that. People inevitably try to, they see the dog, oh, it's a fairy tale. It's cute. It's beautiful. It's sexy. It's handsome. It's whatever it is. And then people think that that's just going to win over everything, right? Your immediate thought doesn't go to, mine does. As soon as I see a dog and I go, oh my God, it's going to be 12, 15 years. I got to have this dog. I got to feed it. I got to take care of it. I can't go anywhere. That's kind of like my overly, I don't want to use, I choose my words carefully on my podcast so that I can make sure that they get out to as many people as possible. But I get obsessive about what it's going to take care of that dog. I really do start looking at it 10 years in. I want a nice dog. I want a dog that's nice with people. I want a dog that's nice with animals. I want a dog that's going to be easy to care for. I want to make my life better. Now, I guarantee some dogs will end up dying because I didn't adopt them from a shelter or a rescue, but that's not my fault, right? It is my concern, but it's not my fault. I didn't mistreat the dog, not train the dog, not structure the dog, and I didn't dump the dog. I didn't do that. So when people try to guilt you into rescuing a dog because the dog is going to die, don't make it your problem if you can't handle it. Right? If you can, if it's a nice dog or it's a dog that needs some work and you want to do that work, you're a trainer, you're a hobby trainer, you know, anything like that, and you feel like you can do the work, then by gosh, do it, right? But don't do it if you can't. Don't put yourself in a position of failure, a position of ruining your life. And I'm being honest on this. You will ruin your life. If you get an aggressive dog, I had several clients who've had severely aggressive dogs, their life is ruined. You can't, if the door opens, the dog gets out. I mean, Bosman got attacked by a dog up the street here that did it 2 and 3 times. The dog should have been put down after the first time. I mean, seriously, you don't get to bite and tear up a dog and then get a second shot at it. Just like you don't get a chance to hurt children or weaker, older people or women or anything like that and then get a second shot. You don't get it, right? So whether you decide to rescue a dog from a breeder or whether you decide to get a dog from a rescue, right? So you can rescue it from a breeder or you can buy it from a breeder. Rescue it from a breeder would be the situation where the dog is older, the dog's been held back, then it's kind of more of an adoption thing. If you get the puppy, you get your name on a puppy, then you're kind of just buying a dog. But it's still the responsible thing to do if you can give that dog a great home. You are responsible for that. It's your job to commit. It's something that people have such a hard time doing in society nowadays. You see it in relationships and friendships and businesses. People flop over and over and over and don't stay with what they've promised themselves to do. So a dog is a commitment for life. You need to know what the right dog is for you, and you cannot be afraid to demand to get that. You want an easy dog, you want a small dog, you want a dog that has this, X, Y, and Z. You are entitled to get exactly what you want in life. You only go through this crazy life one time, I think. But you have to make that decision to make yourself happy. And choosing the wrong dog is like choosing the wrong husband or wife. You're gonna be miserable. And with a husband and wife, I guess you can get a divorce. And with a dog, you can dump them at the shelter. But it's not the right thing to do. Choose carefully and think about that. Whatever you're gonna get, whatever breed it is, whatever it is, don't be guilted into it. Don't get a dog that has severe behavioral issues and thinking they're just gonna go away, because they don't. Even if you can manage them, it takes a long, long time and a lot of consistency and management from there on in. So I grabbed a couple of random questions. It'll probably be a few minutes because I got quite a few of them. But let's get to them. I'm going to put my glasses on so I look really intelligent now. 7 Magpies says, how can I extend the life of my 2-year-old German Shepherd Malamute so he has enough years left to learn not to purposely disobey commands he knows perfectly damn well? The vast majority of the time, he recalls like an oiled bullet. That's a good analogy. But just occasionally, he sees something that really interests him and can see I'm just fine on my own, in which case he gives me the middle paw. More seriously, how can one best approach this problem? So you're not asking me how to make sure the dog has a long life. You're asking me how to make sure the dog listens to you. And in this kind of situation, I'll be honest with you, Magpies, you've got to hunker down. You've got to be strong enough with the dog so that the dog knows when you ask for something, it's serious. We start everything with luring and shaping and treats and all this stuff. But at some point, the dog needs to know that you are going to follow through and correct him and make him do what you're asking him to do. If you're not willing to do that, you can't train this dog. Brianna says, thanks so much for your helpful videos and advice. They helped me train my 1-year-old yellow lab. Do you have any advice in keeping your dogs focused while in heel? My pup Belle knows heel very well, both on and off leash, but after walking for 5 minutes, she stays in a heel. However, she does not pay attention to me. She is a very toy-driven dog, so a treat is not high value enough to reward her. I have tried constantly changing direction, but this only seems to frustrate her and lose even more of her attention. I use a prong collar with a pull tab, but this helps a little. I walk her for about a mile each day, would e-collar. So what I'm not getting from you is you're saying to me you want to keep your dogs focused while in a heel. So there's 2 points to this. One is, are you trying to do a focused heel? And if you are, it's very, very different than a loose leash walk. On a loose leash walk, I don't expect my dog to be focused on me. I expect my dog to check in with me from time to time. And I might do that by giving him a little pop on the collar or anything like that. If you're talking about a focused heel, I just put a video up not too long ago that shows how to do a focused heel. And there are other videos on my YouTube channel as well as my member section, robertcabral.com, that will give you a ton of information on how to do a proper focus heel. And I will always be doing more of those because focus heel is one of those things that people just love to learn. But remember, on a loose leash walk, we don't expect it. On a focused heel, we get it by being exciting, by keeping it short, and by building onto everything we get. So if we get a 30-second focus, then we look for a 40-second focus next time, or a 35-second focus. Gina says, I love your videos and it helped me train my dog. Thank you. I hear that a lot, and it means a lot to me, by the way. I don't take that for granted. I'm very humbled by it. My dog listens to me when I say sit or down, but does not do it with speed. Also, she only listens to me when I have treats. I try to use toys instead of treats, but she doesn't seem to like the toys. Any ideas how to speed up her response and get her to like toys? So if you want to get her to like toys, first of all, use a loaded toy, like a lotus ball that you put treats inside. It's a treat dispensing toy, and when they rip it open, there's treats in there. So that will help you with that part of it. Now, to get the speed up, same exact thing. Do the command. As soon as the dog does it, throw the lotus ball. Lotus ball is a great toy. I did a video on it. I love, love, love the lotus ball. I may actually do another one on it at some point. But I want you to get a better relationship with the dog, and that's going to happen by expecting less and rewarding more, and then expecting more and rewarding more. But you've got to kind of taper it down a little bit. Right now, the dog is probably just kind of crushed with you're expecting too much, you're asking to hold the stay too much, and all that. Watch my videos, especially the ones, again, like I say, in the member section, because they really go into detail on how to build these relationships a lot. Justin says, I have a question. If you have your pup with other dogs and you train the pup at the same time, will the pup not be aggressive to other dogs? No, right? I control the environment. The dogs only interact when I let them interact. They only get to do what I let them do. They don't just get to willy-nilly do whatever they want to do. That's really critical, because showing your dog structure in front of other dogs shows the dog that you have the best interest of the dog in hand, and also it shows the dog that you're confident in control, and then the dog's not going to have that behavior. In fact, it might have just the opposite. Maria says, love your videos. Your advice has helped me so much already. Thank you so much. You're already my favorite channel. Thank you. By the way, this is I'm going to give you this long one, but if you guys are asking long questions, I generally just don't even answer them, because it's just too much. It's just too much for me to get to. My 4-month-old Presa Canary puppy is starting to dislike bedtime. We lure him in there with treats usually, but he is very smart and started to pick up that when a treat goes in the crate, it means bedtime and doesn't follow anymore. We give him naps during the day, usually for a few hours, so we can make the crate his comfortable place. La, 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 la. This gets really long. Giving him a pate stuffed toy, Kong, one of those cuddle puppies with the fake heartbeats. You're going way overboard. The only problem is getting him in the crate to start with. He will no longer lure easily, so I either have to mix up the treats and lure him with different things, or he catches on it's bedtime, sort of gently force him. No, I'm not proud of that either. You're way overthinking this, Maria. We're going to get into this in 1 second. Is there a way to make him go in the crate happily at bedtime? We've done a lot of positive association with it. We've had it always. Well, first of all, I think, can I get pig ears throwing treats? A couple of things. One is the dog only gets fed in the crate. That's it. The only time the dog gets fed is in the crate. At the back of the crate, treats, only time he gets treats is in the crate. You didn't watch my crate training video, because if you did, you would see that when the dog comes out, I don't interact with the dog. I don't pay attention to the dog. And that makes the dog more likely to associate being in the crate, because then I do pay attention to him, as a positive thing. You need to associate the crate with being positive, and you can't do this puppies with heartbeats and pate and the Kong and all these other things, and saying you're gently forcing him in, but you're ashamed of that. Listen, I want you to treat the dog like the dog needs to be treated. Not like you think the dog needs to be treated, but like the dog needs to be treated. The dog, especially the fact that you have a Presa Canario. I mean, that's insane. You're babying this dog. I'm going to tell you something, Maria, and I'm glad that I'm your favorite channel, so I hope you listen to me. If you don't impose structure and strict boundaries and guidelines on a Presa Canario, you are going to have a nightmare of a dog. This is a very, very dominant dog, and you need to make sure the dog listens to what you're telling it. That's it. I'm going to tell you that. I'm being serious now. If you love this channel and I'm your favorite channel, give this dog structure, because you are setting this dog up for a huge failure. Please listen to me. I'm not mad. I'm just really emphatic about what I'm saying, that you must listen to this or you will have a disaster on your hands. Marianne says, please do a video on biting hard and losing control. I have a 20-week-old Malinois Shepherd mix and I don't know how to handle it. I don't want to be negative or yell no, but it hurts and it's getting a little better in the house by me putting my hands behind my back and breaking eye contact with her. But she's still out of control when playing out back when she's excited and running around with the hose water play. She bites my wrist bone so hard it leaves cuts that bleed pretty bad. She won't stop until she gets tired or I end play. But that can take an hour of non-separating. Well, Marianne, here's a great example. You got the dog that I'm talking about in the entire podcast that's not right for you, right? If you have a Malinois and it's a Malinois Shepherd mix, whatever, it's a high drive dog. If you're not ready for that when you get that dog, then you got the wrong dog. But now you're in it. So now you've got to deal with structure, crate training, obedience, focus, controlling the dog. You need to control this dog because it's not going to get better. The dog is going to get stronger and bigger, and the behavior is going to continue. Until you change the dog's behavior, the dog will continue the same behavior. That's it. You must control the dog. At 20 weeks old, you can still control it. But once this Malinois Shepherd mix is going to be a year or two old, you're not going to control it. And whatever you didn't do to control it now is what the dog is going to do forever. And it's going to end up getting in trouble, biting somebody or something. Structure this dog. Watch my videos. I talk about all the different stuff you can do. Obedience, obedience, obedience is your number one answer for this. This is ABOM. I don't know what some kind of a name that you didn't give me a real name is what I'm saying. I have a 3-year-old pit bull, 70 pounds. I give him Taste of the Wild mixed with raw chicken liver or gizzards plus a fish oil pill. He's active, healthy, and unbelievably strong. But when we play with his tug knot And when I give him braided bully sticks, there's usually some blood. I'm assuming it's his gums. Is this normal? So I'm assuming you're saying in his mouth, right? There's some blood on his mouth. So he could have weaker gums. If it's just a little bit, I don't think it's a big deal. I wouldn't worry about it. But if it's something like, if it's excessive blood, he may have an infection or some periodontal disease, and you might want to see a veterinarian about it. Emily, this is the last question here. I hope you enjoyed this one. It should be a good one. Let's hope. I try to make random choices. Hopefully the last one is a good one. I took my puppy from a dog foster home about a year ago. I love him to bits. He has a great personality, and I feel that he loves our family so much. But he poops and pees in the house a lot. So leaving him home is always a challenge for us. My husband and I were thinking about taking him to doggy school. But then again, it's extremely expensive, and the nearest doggy school is far away from us. Maybe you have some advice. I do, Emily. You need to crate the dog. You need to teach the dog what it's like to be in a home. You need to teach the dog what it's like to obey rules and not to be able to pee and run around and do these things. If you're at work during the day, the dog might need to be outside. I hope you have a fenced-in yard. I hope you thought about these things before you got the dog. But you need to get this dog to understand that he's not allowed to pee in the house. The only way a dog's going to learn that is by being in a crate. Crates teach dogs structure. Crate train the dog. There's free video on YouTube that you can watch. There's more videos in my member section that you can watch. And this is your only shot. It's your only answer. And I hope you listen to me and do it, because you can give the dog a fair shot. So that's the end of the podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'll be back next week, I hope. Sometimes I skip a week, but with another podcast. I've got some good guests coming up. Once we get past all this lockdown stuff, I can have actually guests in studio. But right now, we'll probably just do them on the phone. So anyway, there's Goofy. Goofy's going to say, Goofy, come here. Say hi to everybody. There's his head. Oh, that's a good boy. So thanks for being here. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Be sure you check out my membership section, all my social media, and I'll see you next week. All right, Goofy.